Good morning. I'm stating a fact if I tell you that the entire Middle East was primarily Christian dominated. You know, Christian towns, Christian farming communities, Christian cities and Christian churches for 600 years before Islam raised its head. Its somewhat ugly head, in my opinion. Here we have, as you can see, these are the, if you Google it, 700 dead cities. These are the now dead cities, with a few refugees now from the Syrian conflicts that were methodically ransacked, looted, invaded, and the menfolk usually massacred at by the Prophet Muhammad and his offshoots. This was quite soon after Muhammad's death. This would be within like 60 years. They had taken the whole central part of the Middle East, and they were pushing westwards, and within 105 years they had taken the whole of Catholic Spain. Would you believe? Some beautiful pictures here. I mean, these are abandoned cities. I mean, look at these. These are 4th and 5th, and some of them 6th century ruins. I mean, look at this. These were built by hand by Christian folk. Quite advanced people, aren't they? Building this like by hand. I mean, something like that must have took like many years to complete. And there's lovely churches, obviously been abandoned for a very long time, all over one particular part of Syria. This is around Aleppo and Idlib. You can look it up on the map easily enough. But there are dozens and dozens of abandoned buildings. Some of them still quite grand. I mean, some of them have been looted for their stone. This happened with the English castles as well. When, you know, if it became derelict, the locals would loot them for building materials. Here we are, reservoir, huge reservoir to service the village. Look at those stone-built buildings, the roofs. That one's got a solid stone roof which has been opened, probably to look inside. Both of them too. As we see, they are very, very grand. That is plainly a reservoir or bathing area, probably for drinking water, I would expect. Here we have steps. That must have been a bathing area. Well, this is all 5th century. This is like 130, 180 years before the Prophet Muhammad. And as we know, that people from the Middle East were not so ingenious as these Christians were. Here's one of the poor Syrian refugees. For all we know, he could be a Christian. They've been battered and bombed just like the rest of them by the cruel Assad regime, the Nazi Assad regime. As we look at these, look at those doorways. Those have been hand cut. There's a few sheep there. Young lad there. You can see the farmland. Lots of buildings behind, and there's some beautiful churches. And obviously the roofs are missing, but these were all pre-Muhammad, pre-Islam. Because whether you realise it or not, I know it because I was told when I was a young lad, and I've confirmed it, the Prophet Muhammad was a throat-slicing gangster, killer, and he also had a peculiar liking for youngsters. I'll just leave it at that. You can imagine what I mean. We look at these. These are all pre-Islamic, pre-Muhammad. Look at that. This must have had floors. This was a 3-floored building. This was all built by Christians, old Christians. I mean, you can imagine they must have been very successful farmers and traders. Apparently that's usually what they did, carpet making, jewellery, etc. and farming. They must have been very successful if they could keep their families and have enough spare time, money and energy to build these, wasn't they? Well, they were very successful, like the Jews. They were very successful and they were very envied by the Quraysh tribe, the Prophet's old gang. This was the illiterate tribe. Muhammad and his comrades, none of them could read or write. This is a matter of fact. This is stated in the Quran itself. The dates of his first massacres, which was 627 AD, was his first massacre of an invasion of Banu Qurayza. He said the whole of the Middle East was Christian dominated, but around the Prophet's area of Saudi, it was primarily Jewish. So the Jewish people got it first, and indeed it states in the Quran that the person that actually killed Muhammad and one of his mates, his second in command, was in fact a Jewish slave cook. Now, hardly any surprise really, because he had enslaved a whole tribe, murdered all the menfolk, murdered all the uncles. Anyone over 12 used to be murdered, thereby they couldn't stage a revolution or fight back. And of course, the routine was to rape or take all the children and womenfolk as sex slaves. There's a little Syrian lad there, posing for the picture. He looks healthy enough, at least. As you see, it's quite green. I mean, this is like parts of Syria are actually harsh desert, but you can see it's quite green. This is why they settled there, to do successful farming. I mean, look at this. This is all 5th century stuff. Look at it. Beautiful. This page was made by a Greek guy, and I've seen other features, but this guy's on Facebook. I might share a link. But these were all built by Christians, your old Christian forebears who were massacred by the Prophet Muhammad and his gang. Of course, Muhammad would be dead by then. Muhammad was only actually in power 14 years, you see. And he wasn't the sharpest tool in the box, because he let one of his massacre slavery victims, this Jewish cook, Bint, I forget her name, but she was a Jewish cook in her 30s, probably late 20s, 30s. She had several children, and he had sold all her children into sexual slavery, because the throat-slashing prophet was in fact a rapist himself. It states he had a liking for young kids like Aisha, who he got with and who took over. Maybe she could cope with his little wrinkly. She took over the empire after he died. Some say it was her that had him killed, actually, which wouldn't surprise me. I mean, I don't think you'd ever forgive being raped at the age of six or seven, would you? Really? Probably. But anyway, I wonder if it's got a picture. Yes, here we are. So a picture of some of the churches. They had proper monasteries and everything. Look at that. Isn't that grand? That was built in the, I think that's 6th century. Does it say the date? It's got all the silent witness to a civilization now vanished into the footnotes of history. It didn't vanish of its own volition. It didn't vanish through plague. It vanished through Islam. And there's one of the little Syrian lads gathering some water. So I won't go on too much. I'll try and put a link underneath and hope this video doesn't get took off, because anything that tells the truth of this ideology, you see, that we're talking about, or this man, this old Mo, tends to disappear. Look at these Syrian kids. These are refugee kids who've settled there, because as you see, there is drinking water there. There is, it's possible to cultivate there, and I hope they survive and do well. Maybe it could be repopulated at some time. I mean, it's obviously in quite a plush area for Syria. Here we are. That's a system. That's a system for doing washing in or collecting rainwater again. We look at these. These are all built by your Christian forebears. Long, long time ago, but then wiped out by Muhammad's bloodthirsty gangsters. So I hope you like this. Look at this lad. He's got a shelter in one of the caverns, not for Syrian refugee. Again, I mean, all this trouble in the Middle East is caused from the ideology, because it states that you must all be slaves to whoever's in charge, which was Bashar al-Assad, who's been responsible for many, massacres. I've seen many pictures of his massacres by his, what are they called? Shibeen, not Shibeen, what was it? Oh, I forget. His name of his private police force, his Gestapo. They're quite wonderful, aren't they? All these built by our Christian relatives, and we're not allowed to mention it, because it's all a religion of peace, isn't it? It's always been beautiful. There was nothing before Muhammad, was there? Not even like gigantic churches like these. There's a Syrian refugee. So there you go, guys, and it's made by, I'll try and find his name. These are the best pictures I've seen. There we go. Is that it? Bruce Aldous? No. I'll just try and find his name. I want to give him full credit, because he's probably been up there to get these pictures. I've seen lots of these pictures before, but not as high quality as this. Anyway, there you go, guys. But this is what was replaced. This, civilized, friendly, considerate, quite innovative Christianity around Aleppo and what have you. Idlib. This is what was replaced with savage, invading, genital mutilating, Nazi jihad, and that's all it's ever been. My dad told me about it when I was about 12, 13, the whole truth, And I hardly believed him at the time, but when I researched it, it was all right. It was all correct, It was all to do with slave taking, self-enrichment, envy, and basically massacring every town they came into. If you didn't convert, by the way, if you were either massacred, if you volunteered to convert, you could do. That saved your life, but then you were a slave to the jizya tax. Jizya is an extortion tax where they can come round and literally take your kids, because you just set it at some mega high figure, and then they can, come around every couple of years and take your crop of babies to sell into sexual slavery. How evil is that? And of course, Islam has run the entire slave trade for 1450 years. Apart from, even at the end, when we stopped them castrating them, the last couple hundred years when Britain and America were involved, it was still organised and run mainly by Arabs and black Muslim Africans. See you guys.